I saw something quite recently when it comes to Zebec, and that's how allegedly they made this post talking about how 10% of the total supply of ZBCN is currently locked up. Now, nothing I say is financial advice, but why do I find it pretty interesting? Now, in the grand scheme of things, people may be thinking, okay, first of all, 10%, that's not even that much. Take a look at this other project that's over 20%, over 30%, or whatever, right? I'm totally aware of that, but I think it's not bad at the end of the day. Because 10%, that's actually quite a significant amount. Not too much in the grand scheme of things, but quite significant considering, I think, sort of the upcoming popularity of Zebec, considering kind of its up-and-coming nature, not really that established project yet, but still having that statistic, I find it pretty impressive because, to me, right, some other projects out there, sure, they have way more holders. They have more that is locked up. But those projects sometimes, they've been around for quite a while. Zebec hasn't really become mainstream yet, in my perspective. I mean, it's pretty recognizable, I guess, as of right now within its niche, but it's not really like something that is, if I told my friend about this, a lot of them would know. A lot of them would not know about this because a lot of them just don't really know what Zebec is, just because it's not that popular. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's such a bad thing in my perspective because as a result of ZBCN not being that popular, so to speak, it's around 36 times lower than 10 cents, which may not seem like such a good thing at first glance, but the lower something is, I don't see why I wouldn't necessarily like it because I'm looking to dollar cost average. So if something's low and I'm looking to dollar cost average and I'm actually a fan of the project, I'm not going to complain, I suppose. But also on top of that, if I take a look at Zebec overall, I think having 10% of the total supply locked up quite essentially, very recently I saw that, I think it gives the project a little bit more stability, right? And I also have to consider how when it comes to Zebec, or should I say ZBCN, Circle is allegedly a pretty big holder when it comes to ZBCN. So that right there, I think also indirectly kind of gives it a little bit more stability, right? Because even though ZBCN in 2025 never reached the heights in terms of market cap that its closest competitor called Onyx did, because Onyx that year reached around like a billion and ZBCN only around 500 million. But if we consider like for 2025, like the pullback when it comes to ZBCN, generally speaking, wasn't as drastic as something like Onyx, or should I say XCN, because I just think that generally, if I take a look at the backers when it comes to Zebec, Solana Ventures, something like Circle, which by the way is not only publicly listed, but they're also the creator of USDC. So yeah, besides that point though, I think that indirectly sort of gives the project somewhat more stability, right? As opposed to some other projects out there that don't have that sort of backing. So when I take a look at Zebec overall, I take a look at its backers and how 10% of its total supply is supposedly locked up. I find that pretty interesting and I find that pretty cool. And again, sure, it's around 36 times lower than 10 cents. However, I'd actually prefer ZBCN being around 36 times lower than 10 cents right now, as opposed to, let's say, it's like only 20 times or 15 times lower. Because to me, if something is around 36 times lower than 10 cents, again, why would I complain about that? If I'm looking to dollar cost average, I like it if it's down here, not up here. You know what I mean? Now, do I want something to be low forever? Absolutely not. Why would I? But I'm just saying, I can't even control this market at all. Like, I have no control over it, right? If it's showcasing to me something that's low, you know what? I'm not going to complain about that. I'll be like, okay, I'll just dollar cost average personally in my perspective, but I'm only doing it once a month though, right? So whatever that is, at the end of the month, basically, whether it's, low or medium or high or whatever, when it comes to the level of ZBCN, I'm just going to dollar cost average. Now, if it's low, I'd be happier than if it wasn't. That's my perspective, temporarily though. But besides that, if I take a look at ZBCN overall, I mean, just as a project, right, when it comes to Zebec, it's not necessarily reinventing the wheel by any means. Like, for instance, okay, it has an aspect of ISO 20022 now, right? But a lot of other projects out there also have that. So it's really nothing that kind of special in the grand scheme of things, but actually, I think it's not that bad anyways, considering how Zebec has an aspect of Solana, and also it's focused on global trade and finance, a market that isn't really known for so many competitors to begin with. I mean, if I ask a lot of people out there to name more than 5 projects within this space of global trade and finance, a lot of them don't really know, right? Like, for instance, I think there's only pretty much 7 recognizable projects within this space as of right now, global trade and finance. That's not too much competition, I think, when it comes to ZBCN. Zebec is one out of the 7, you know? So it's pretty much competing against 6 other competitors. But the thing is, they're not even really all directly competitors when it comes to Zebec anyways, because if I take a look at XDC, I take a look at Stellar, and I also take a look at the number 1 player within this space, like, Zebec is not overtaking that, right? So automatically, ZBCN now is just kind of competing against, the remaining 3. And the thing is, XPR and Swiftcoin, it's like way smaller than Zebec. So basically, the most main competitor when it comes to Zebec is just Onyx. It doesn't have like 20 or 30 sort of Onyx archetypes, right? There's not like that many of those types competing with Zebec currently. There just isn't. There could be moving forward, but there just isn't as of right now. So Zebec isn't even under such stiff competition to begin with, and it has an aspect of Solana, and I saw how 10% of the total supply was locked up, and also, not to mention, I take a look at how Circle is a backer when it comes to Zebec, Solana Ventures. So again, in the grand scheme of things, I'm just still a fan. That's my perspective. I'm still taking a look at it in 2026. Now, 2026, I think so far we've seen like a slight recovery, right? But it hasn't really been like that drastic. It hasn't really been anything reminiscent of what we saw last year when it comes to a lot of other projects out there, let alone just like, 6 months ago or 7 months ago. But personally for me, I don't think I've seen an altcoin season during this cycle. And because of that, I'm just still a bit curious as to what could happen during this cycle. So I haven't given up, right? I have not given up, I should say. Now, also in the grand scheme of things as well, I view Zebec as more of a project that, sure, it's never going to overtake like XDC or Stellar, but I don't mind because I don't think every single individual that enters into the space wants a project that is having such a massive market cap anyways, right? At least I'm personally not always looking for something with such a massive market cap. So I think Zebec represents like a project that is in the global trade and finance space that doesn't have this sort of like dinosaur level type of market cap where it's so massive, It's more so a project that's kind of, again, kind of up and coming a little bit. However, it hasn't really become mainstream yet. But sometimes there's like sort of this hypothetical market for something like that, in my perspective. Because if only the massive projects got attention, that means Solana wouldn't be there, right? That means like Avalanche, because a lot of people would probably thought, oh, Ethereum, Bitcoin, and all this, but that simply isn't the case, right? There's other projects too. Sometimes when I enter into the space, I'm not looking for necessarily, what has the biggest market cap. Sometimes I want to look for something that's a little bit lower in terms of market cap, right? Because in theory, the lower something is, the ceiling is sometimes farther away in some cases, not in every single case. So when it comes to Zebec, I'm still a fan. I'm still holding. I'm still waiting, and I'll wait and see what happens. But I have no control over this, right? But you know what? At the end of the day, all I can do is stay patient. But that's what I'm going to do, and I'll wait and see what happens. But yeah, again, nothing I say is financial advice, and I'm not telling anyone to do anything. However, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a very nice day. But I just wanted to make this updated video talking about the recent post that I saw, and how I found it to be pretty cool, at least in my perspective. So yeah, I hope you all have a very nice day.